In the heart of Florida, amidst the sweltering heat and the whispering pines, lies the tale of Aileen Wuornos, a woman whose life traversed the darkest depths of human existence. Her story is one of desperation, survival, and ultimately tragedy. Aileen's journey from troubled beginnings to becoming one of America's most notorious female serial killers is a haunting exploration of the human psyche and the harrowing consequences of a life filled with pain and betrayal.
I'm Sammy.
And I'm Nicole,
and we are Spooky Sleuths.
Hey guys.
Hello.
Welcome back to Spooky Sleuths.
This week we have a serial killer for ya.
Yeah, and it's a female, which we don't talk about often because there's not as many that are documented.
Right. We all know women are crazy.
Exactly.
Just kidding. We're women. We can say it.
So let's talk about Aileen Wuornos.
I can't wait.
She's heavily talked about, but this really goes deep into her upbringing and kind of gives you a different perspective.
Yeah.
Aileen Wuornos was born on February 29th, 1956, a leap day baby, in Rochester, Michigan. She had a very rough childhood and was neglected from the time she was a small child.
I didn't know she was from Michigan.
And how'd you wind up in Florida, man?
Right.
Her father wasn't around and never met Aileen because he was in prison. In 1956, he was in prison for child SA and kidnapping. He later unalived himself in prison. Her mother, Diane, describes Aileen and her brother, Keith, as being crying, unhappy babies. She would leave the two children with their grandparents. Diane couldn't cope with her children and being a single mom, so she was unable to raise her children. Her parents agreed to legally adopt them.
Okay.
Later, Diane would say that giving up her children was probably the biggest mistake she ever made in her life. While still a young child, Aileen was involved in a fire. Her face was scarred in the event, which can be psychologically scarring for a young girl.
Oh, yeah. She probably got made fun of a lot, and I did always wonder where that scar came from on her face.
Yeah, from a fire, which, as a child, that would be psychologically, but as an adult, that's
right.
Life-changing.
Yeah.
After this, she became difficult to be friends with and had very few friends. She also had an explosive temper.
So it's like she had the fire inside her.
That was very philosophical.
It was.
I'm proud of you. When Aileen was between 10 and 12 years old, she found out that her parents were not her parents, but her grandparents.
Again, psychologically scarring. Can you imagine thinking that your parents were your parents and they're not?
Why wouldn't they just say, why wouldn't you just raise those kids up we're grandma and grandpa?
So many families do that now. There's a lot of grand families, especially in our state.
Right. And it would be easier to explain that and say that, your parents wanted a better life for you. You didn't have to get into the negative, just...
Absolutely.
Doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, but it happens all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And naturally, this added more tension to the household, which was already an unhappy household. Aileen's grandfather was an abusive man. He was a harsh disciplinarian and would physically, psychologically, and sexually abuse her.
Oh.
One incident Aileen recalled was her grandfather forcing her to watch him drown a kitten. That incident alone would be traumatizing and cause psychological damage.
Absolutely.
Her grandfather would also take away her Christmas gifts that came from her mother. Add in the physical and sexual abuse that Aileen was raised around, I'm sure it's no surprise to anyone that she began working as a sex worker at age 11.
Oh my God.
11 years old.
That's prepubescent.
That says a lot it says a lot about the world we live in, that there's even work for an 11-year-old in that.
Absolutely. And I also just want to say, we're feeling bad for this child, Aileen. We are not feeling bad for the adult.
Oh, no.
But this, being raised like this, how does anybody come out of that with no lasting effects?
Exactly. This is one of those cases that nature versus nurture, and nurture definitely took over here.
Yeah.
The grandfather also sexually abused Eileen's brother Keith. So it wasn't just
so
one
it was
child.
both of them.
Their grandmother knew about the abuse the children were facing at the hands of their grandfather, and she did not help.
How do you do that?
I don't know, man. If any of my relatives, including her father, would do anything to my child.
I could never turn the other way. If I knew, like, I don't have children of my own, but I have 2 adult stepchildren, and if I found out anybody did anything to them, I would be burning villages down.
Exactly.
But I just don't know how you look the other way.
You're like, oh, my husband's not in bed. I'll just go back to sleep.
Right.
Like, that's not okay, ever. She was an alcoholic, but I don't think that excuses that behavior.
I don't either. And
I have a giant heart for alcoholics. Like, I love a lot of people that suffer with that disease.
And I guess we also have to think, too, if that's what he was doing to the grandkids, what was he doing to her, too? Not an excuse, but battered women.
Yeah.
Right.
It would later be discovered that Aileen suffers from several personality disorders, which, of course, your personality would split. Like, you would have to disassociate from all of that.
Absolutely.
But she suffered from borderline personality.
Personality?
She suffered from borderline personality disorder and antisocial personality disorder caused by the trauma she experienced as a child. And again,
I believe it.
Absolutely. And those aren't excuses for how she acted as an adult and those behaviors and crimes she committed, but perspective.
Yeah, it's expected whenever you go through something like this.
And those issues can also be contributed to abandonment issues. I mean, all of it. She's like the cornerstone for why mental health needs to be talked about more.
Absolutely. We need, like, the stigma around mental health, especially during that time period.
Exactly.
You didn't go get help. Had she gotten help, would we be talking about her today?
Were there even the resources to give her the help she needed back then?
Yeah, that's true, too.
I mean, accessibly.
Right. I mean, mental health resources are not super accessible today.
Right.
So
it wouldn't surprise me if there wasn't anything in her, like, in her town.
Right.
And Aileen wasn't the brightest star in the sky either. She had an IQ of 81, which is considered dull.
Yeah.
She had behavior issues that trickled into her school life as well, which didn't bode well for her. Because of her behavior issues, Aileen was given tranquilizers.
So instead of figuring out why she's behaving that way,
we're gonna
trank her.
Yeah. We're gonna mute it. Aileen began trading sex for cigarettes with boys around town that she knew. And this behavior caused her peers to begin calling her cigarette pig. Aileen began running away from home frequently. She would spend time in juvenile detention for repeatedly running away. By age 14, Aileen was pregnant. There are a lot of retellings and different explanations of how she became pregnant at that young age, but she started as a sex worker at age 11.
Right. It's no surprise.
She first claimed to have been essayed first by her brother Keith. Aileen had told people to her that her and her brother had sex multiple times, but she denies it as well. It's confusing.
She's like back and forth on it. And I mean, I'm sure her brother denies it.
Even if it was true, I'm sure he's going to deny it.
But honestly, the environment that they were raised in, would they have known that that was wrong? That you don't do that? Like when they were little kids, you know?
Right. And it would probably just became norm.
I mean, yeah, incest is wild.
That's putting it very, very lightly.
Yeah.
And very PG as far as we can go here. However, it's much more likely that her grandfather was the father of the baby. In an interview, a different person was named, or rather unnamed but talked about. The guy that essayed her was like 60 years old, and he loves all the kids. Aileen was drunk, and he'd take advantage of her and shit like that, so that's who she got pregnant by, is what her childhood best friend Don Botkins claims. Which also, doesn't that sound like maybe her grandfather?
Right.
Like, that's just my interpretation of that quote. But
I mean,
maybe.
Yeah. But also, as wild as she was, running around at that age.
It's hard to tell.
Yeah. You would just need a DNA test.
Eileen's grandfather sent her away to Detroit when she became pregnant. She would be housed at a home for unwed mothers. Aileen gave birth to the baby boy when she was 15 and named him Keith after her brother, which also just throws red flags.
Yeah.
Because of what they're saying. Not necessarily now, but...
Yeah, but people name kids after their parents all the time, and they're not the,
right.
typically not the father.
It's like, but because of this and unknowing the father and things that were said...
It makes it a little sus.
That's... Okay. And her grandfather forced her to give baby Keith up for adoption.
But see, all those circumstances make me think that he is the grandfather. Right. He sent her away. He made her give up the baby.
It gives major red flags. Yeah. But that happened all the time back then, too.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's true. I don't know. Are there still schools for unwed mothers? I don't think so. I don't think that's a thing anymore.
If there are, it's not nearly as stigmatized.
Like, whenever I picture that, I picture, like, a bunch of nuns running around, like, beating you with rulers and, maybe that's just old Catholic school I'm thinking of. But in my brain, there's a bunch of pregnant women wearing, like, nun costumes.
The pregnant women are wearing nun
costumes? I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know how this works. Have you ever been sent to a home for unwed mothers? Let us know, because I need to know.
Not long after the birth of the baby, Aileen made some big changes in her life. They weren't for the better, though. Her grandmother passed away in 1971 from cirrhosis of the liver caused by her many years of alcoholism. After her passing, Eileen's grandfather kicked her out of the house. Aileen dropped out of school and was sleeping in the woods, abandoned cars, or juvenile detention centers. Only 5 years later, in 1976, her grandfather unalived himself. Aileen did not attend her grandfather's funeral and decided to leave the area. She began hitchhiking and continued working as a sex worker. So it's not long after the birth of the baby, so we're probably 15, 16?
Yeah.
Clearly, Aileen was no stranger to law enforcement. At this point in 76, when Aileen was only 20 years old, she had been in and out of the correctional system for almost half her life. During her travels as a drifter, she had been arrested in Colorado. She did not show up to court for charges of disorderly conduct, driving under the influence, and firing a weapon from a moving vehicle.
Oh.
She is wild.
Yeah.
Since she didn't show, a warrant was issued for her arrest, which is pretty typical. I could show up to a court hearing for not paying a bill and somebody suing me, and there'd be a warrant out for my arrest. But Aileen made it down to Florida through hitchhiking. While there, she married a 69-year-old yacht club. She married a yacht club president.
How old was he?
69.
Nice.
Louis Gratzfeld. Their marriage only lasted about a month before Louis filed for divorce.
Oh, okay.
He claimed that Aileen had a violent and ungovernable temper.
Okay, but governable?
Yeah, that's definitely a different way of saying...
I would like Dave trying to govern my temper.
He also claimed...
I feel like you made that weird.
I did. It's fine. He also claimed that she was abusive, which I can absolutely see. Yeah. That was her norm. Because, I mean, her grandmother was also beaten by her grandfather. Like, that's normal for her.
If we are raised in abuse, that's all you know.
There's that story about the two brothers that were raised by an alcoholic, abusive father. One turned right into him and one went completely the opposite direction. And that's very true.
It is.
You either grow up to be right how you were raised or complete opposite.
Yeah. And I think a lot of factors go into that, though. Like, if there is, like, sexual abuse is just a different level of traumatizing.
Absolutely. And especially by someone that is supposed to be taking care of you.
Right. And she has a lower IQ. I mean, she doesn't have the lowest IQ in the world, but she has a lower IQ, and I think that kind of plays a role in it. I mean, none of her behavioral or mental health issues have ever been addressed. So, not that they're excuses, but circumstances, maybe she didn't know that she could choose a different life.
Right. It's what she knew. It was comfortable, which is sad. But whenever he claimed she was abusive, he also stated that she beat him with his cane.
Oh.
He filed a restraining order against her.
Probably a good idea, especially knowing what we know now.
Absolutely. In 1976, Aileen not only went through her first divorce, but her brother Keith passed away. Keith had esophageal cancer and died in hospice care. He left Aileen $10,000 in his life insurance policy, which is about $45,000 today.
So not a lot.
But for Aileen, it would have
Probably, yeah.
It could have been life-changing, but Aileen went right through that money in just a few months. Not only did Keith die that year, but this was also the same year that her biological father unalived himself in prison. A bad year.
Yeah.
And Aileen, like you said, Aileen never got help for her mental health issues. She was depressed and did not cope well with the loss of people in her life or with her circumstances. She attempted to unalive herself for the first time in 1978. She shot her... Oh my gosh. Please tell me this isn't a people thing.
Beavers.
Yes. She shot herself in the stomach, but the injury was not fatal.
She's very lucky.
Absolutely. She continued to work as a sex worker and would occasionally commit small crimes for money. She had aliases to evade the police. She would be known as Lee Blauvek, Lori Grody, and Cammie Green. She would rack up a rap sheet with her crimes, including armed robbery, check forgery, and auto theft. Aileen found herself in jail in the early 80s for the armed robbery charge. She was drunk and tried to rob a convenience store while in a bikini.
I'm trying to picture that in my brain, and it's just really funny.
Which, I mean, she's in Florida, so that may...
I guess that may not be too weird.
Especially that time, they probably didn't have, like, you know, the no shoes, no shirt, no service.
Yeah, but, like, could you imagine in small town West Virginia?
Stick 'em up! Put the money in my tankini! Aileen received $33 from this robbery.
Worth it.
And had to serve a year in prison.
Worth it for the $33.
But she continued this criminal behavior through the 80s. In June of 1986, she began using her Lee Blauvek alias more regularly. She met a 24-year-old woman in a gay bar who would become her girlfriend. The woman was Tyra Moore. Tyra worked as a housekeeper or maid for various companies while Aileen continued sex work. Aileen was very possessive over Tyra. She would become very angry when Tyra went to work or talked to other people.
Oh.
So very controlling.
Yeah.
Which sounds a lot like her grandfather.
Right.
The pair moved a lot between motel rooms, apartments, and mobile homes in Daytona and other surrounding areas.
They just couldn't find a place to stick.
Which is pretty common for that kind of life.
When you're on the lam. Is it land or lamb?
Lamb.
Why is it lamb?
I don't know. But I don't think it's like lamb like bah.
Oh.
I think it's lamb like Lam.
So what I was thinking was like...
What were you thinking, dear?
Like, oh crap, the cops are coming after me. And then they would hop on a lamb and right away. I thought that's where the saying came from, like back in the olden times. I didn't know if people rode lambs back then.
Have you ever seen a lamb?
Yeah, they go bah.
They do go bah, but they're not big enough.
Aren't they woolly?
When they become sheep. I mean, they have wool as lambs too, but it's not like a big puffball.
Oh. Well, anyway, that's why I wanted to clarify.
Taken on the lamb, meaning to run away, originated as criminal and underworld slang before the turn of the century.
So it is old-timey speak, but why a lamb if they weren't running away with a lamb? Or like people who were like lamb thieves start saying it.
Lamb, Lam, originally meant beat or strike. It comes from the same Old English root word as the word lame, and so the verb to lam meant to give someone a crippling beating.
Oh. I'm going with Lamb. I don't want a crippling beating. I don't ever want to be on the lamb,
You'd rather jump on a sheep to get away from the cops?
A lamb.
A baby sheep.
I'd rather just not have to get away from the cops.
Yeah, let's just go with that. In 1989, Eileen's crimes changed in severity and intent. Aileen was hitchhiking and working as a prostitute when a man named Richard Mallory picked her up along Interstate 75. Richard was 51 years old and worked as a repair shop owner. He was known to hire sex workers. Aileen claimed that Richard was trying to SA her and she shot him to protect herself.
Okay.
I'm not saying sex workers can't be SA'd.
Oh, they absolutely can.
Absolutely.
I think she's using it that way.
Yes, just because of the events that continue to unfold.
Which is probably part of the reason why when sex workers do come forward with their real assaults, they're not taken seriously.
Absolutely. Later, she would claim that he did SA her and she murdered him out of fear that he would murder her. So it's like, I'm going to get you before you get me.
So we're changing stories. She seems to change stories a lot. But I think that's probably part of her mental health issues.
Absolutely. Like, it's like her personalities. Like,
yeah.
And which coping mechanism she can use in that particular moment with whoever she's talking to.
Makes me wonder if she even knows the truth.
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's like, how many times do you say a lie before that becomes your truth?
That's why I just don't lie. I'm bad at it.
You are. He was robbed and his body left in an illegal dumping site in the woods under a piece of carpet several miles away from his abandoned car.
That's just disrespectful. Cover me with a carpet?
I mean, all of it's disrespectful.
You could at least put a blanket over me.
I doubt
I might get cold.
Maybe.
I guess the carpet would keep me warm.
You're dead. So I don't think you care.
Listen, I would care. Because
Okay.
when I die, I'm haunting everybody. So I'll be there. I'll know.
Okay. Eileen's next victim was David Spears. David was a 43-year-old construction worker that picked up Aileen to hire her for her services. He was found nude along the side of the road and had been shot 6 times in his chest. His truck was also found close by, and he was robbed. The third victim is Charles Carskadon. Charles was a 40-year-old truck driver and part-time rodeo bull rider.
Oh, that's fun.
Charles, along with every other victim of Eileen's, was hiring her for her services as a sex worker. He was shot 9 times in his chest and stomach and was found in the woods. So
9 times is excessive.
I think she excessively gets it with her pew-pew weapon.
Yeah.
His car was not close by, rather a completely different location. The next victim was Peter Seams. Peter was a 65-year-old missionary who police still have never located the body of.
That's really sad for his family.
It is. Peter's car was found abandoned, and the inside had bloodstains on the seats and door handles. Witnesses have described 2 women near the car prior to police finding it.
Interesting.
Eileen's 5th victim was Troy Burris. Troy was a 50-year-old sausage truck driver.
Yeah, he was.
Troy was a 50-year-old sausage truck driver who was found by a group of people just having a picnic in the woods by the lake.
Oh.
His body was decomposed severely at this point, but investigators did determine that he was shot twice in the chest. So only twice.
Okay. But still, why are we shooting these men? If you're putting yourself out there as a sex worker and they're picking you up, unless they... I doubt every single man she picks up is SAing her. I just... That's kind of hard to believe. It can happen. But I really don't see why she would shoot all these men.
Yeah, let's keep going and we'll learn a little bit about Aileen. Because we still got 2 more victims to go.
All right.
Charles Humphreys was a retired Air Force major, police chief, and child abuse investigator.
Oh, the irony.
Absolutely. He was found fully clothed and was shot in the head and chest. His car was found abandoned at a nearby gas station. Charles was found by 2 young boys riding their bikes. They accidentally ran over him.
Oh, that's awful.
Those poor boys. I mean, poor Charles.
Poor Charles, but yeah. Poor boys.
Eileen's final victim was a 62-year-old truck driver, Walter Antonio. He was found near a remote logging road, nude with 4 pew-pew shot wounds. His car wasn't found for 5 days and was in a whole different county.
So it sounds like she took these cars on joyrides.
Yes, after every victim.
Yeah.
All victims had things in common. The first is the weapon used. All the victims were shot with a .22 caliber pew-pew. They also were all robbed. Their vehicles were all found abandoned near or on a major road. Given all these similarities, the police knew they were looking for one person who committed all these murders.
Right.
Remember how a witness saw 2 women around Peter Seam's car?
Yeah.
Well, the witness was able to help police come up with a sketch of the woman. After the sketch was released, Tyra knew she had to get out of town.
That seems sus. Was she one of the 2 women?
Dun, dun, dun. Apparently, Aileen confessed to murdering Richard Mallory the day after it happened. Not only that, but Aileen would often come home with new things to pawn or even cars that she borrowed.
So when Tyra saw this sketch, she was like,
Oh man, I gotta go.
yeah.
Tyra knew Aileen was the murderer that the police was looking for. The police had the sketch and a print from Peter's car, which was a perfect match to Aileen.
Okay.
It was difficult to track down Aileen, though. She had so many aliases, Tyra fled to her hometown in Pennsylvania. Aileen would pawn items frequently, but she always used different aliases, so this was no help to the police.
Right.
I mean, she had 3 before she even went to Florida.
Yeah.
They were eventually able to find her at a bar in Port Orange, Florida. They were able to arrest her on another outstanding charge for weapons possession while they tried to gather the evidence they needed for the murder cases, so they were at least able to get her stopped.
Yes.
The police knew that they needed Tyra to help convict Aileen. So they convinced her to come back to Florida, and she agreed to cooperate with the investigation.
Well, that's good.
The police put Tyra up in a hotel in Daytona Beach where she stayed for 4 days. She was given only hamburgers and Budweiser and was there to gather information for the police.
I want to go to a hotel room for 4 days
With hamburgers
and
and
Budweiser. I mean, I'd probably prefer Mick Ultra, but
Yeah, it's fine. You take what you can get. The police recorded all her conversations with Aileen in which she begged her for details of the crimes. During a conversation, Aileen stated, "I will not let you be involved in the picture. You're not the one. I'm the one who did everything. I did it all myself." On January 16th, 1991, Aileen confessed to the murders of the 7 men, only after Tyra told her the police were investigating Tyra for the murders. So to save Tyra,
Aileen confessed.
she wanted to save her girlfriend. In this phone call, Aileen claims that she murdered the men because she was desperately in love with Tyra and wanted them to stay together. That doesn't make any sense to me.
It does not.
I'm not sure in what frame of mind you have to be in to do that, but that doesn't make sense. Aileen's attorney would later claim that law officers improperly tricked her into confessing, and in doing so, violated her right to counsel. I'm not exactly sure how I feel about that, because they did their due diligence, but also manipulated the situation, so I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like police do that all the time, though.
I feel like that's not out of the norm.
Yeah.
I mean, or do I watch too much TV? I might watch too much TV.
I watch a lot of SVU.
The Florida Supreme Court concluded that Aileen freely waived her rights and confessed, contrary to advice of counsel both before and during the first confession and later.
So they're like, no, she knew she shouldn't say anything without her lawyer.
Exactly. In January 1992, her first trial began. This was for the murder of Richard Mallory. As the trial began, Aileen was concerned that she was not going to get a fair trial. She would speak to reporters and insist that she committed the murders out of self-defense and about how the trial wouldn't go her way. She is quoted as saying, "I'm never going to get a fair trial, and they're going to hang me. They're going to electrocute me, give me life in prison, and I don't deserve it. I don't deserve life. It was just self-defense."
Okay, why are you talking to reporters if you're worried about, like, a tainted jury or something?
And that statement she's crazy. Unfortunately. I mean,
Yeah.
she should have gotten the help she needed as a young child. And maybe this could have been avoided. Maybe not, but maybe.
Maybe.
they're gonna hang me. They're gonna electrocute me. They're gonna give me life in prison, and I don't deserve it. I don't deserve life.
Right.
Like, they're all conflicting. We don't deserve this, but we don't deserve life. I don't know, man. Naturally, Aileen was found guilty in the murder of Richard Mallory. Although 3 expert witnesses and the state's expert psychologist spoke about Eileen's mental health disorders, the jury unanimously voted in favor of the death penalty.
That's where I get a little gray with it. I don't know. I don't know about putting people to death that have mental illnesses that cause their crimes. I don't know. The death penalty is so gray for me. I can't have an opinion on it.
I feel the same way. Like, in certain situations, I'm like, yes, they do not deserve this. And others, I'm like, who am I to play that figure?
Yep. Because I have seen, like, I've read about so many people that have gotten a death sentence, but then were later found that they didn't commit the crime they were convicted of. And what if that death sentence had already been carried out? It happens. Then they died for no reason. And that's the part about the death penalty that gets me hung up. Is that not everyone, our system is not perfect enough to kill people because we get it wrong so many times. I don't know.
Right. I mean, Aileen fully confessed.
Yeah.
I mean, she absolutely...
She did it, but is her mental health a factor in her crimes?
Right. I don't necessarily think that Aileen would have done well in an institution.
I don't either.
Like, if they would have said, okay, well, you can spend life in this institution, I don't think that would have done...
I think it's a catch-22 for her.
Right. Like, in her particular instance, I don't want to say she wasn't able to be rehabilitated, but I really don't know if she was.
I don't either.
Like, she's a hard one. I mean...
She's so far gone that I don't know if she could be rehabilitated.
That's what I'm getting at. Like, I'm not saying she didn't deserve the old college try, but I don't know, man. She also caused a lot of death.
Yeah.
And a lot of families are now fatherless, husbandless, brotherless. I mean, it's awful. She was never charged with the murder of Peter Seams because his body was never found. It's
really hard to do.
It's really hard to prove murder without a body. Aileen pled no contest to the other 5 murders and was found guilty, receiving a death sentence for each victim. Of course, her attorneys tried to get her death sentences overturned, but they were denied. In 2001, Aileen fired her defense team and asked to be put to death. She stated, "There's no change in keeping me alive or anything because I'd kill again. I have hate crawling through my system."
Case in point, she doesn't even think she can be rehabilitated. She may just be saying that because of her mental state at the time, but...
It's hard to tell.
It's hard.
Especially when it comes to borderline personality disorder and everything else she's got going on. She's a pathological liar. You don't know. And this is where I get weird, man. Like, I don't know. On October 9th, 2002, Aileen was executed by lethal injection. So she was wrong. She wasn't electrocuted. She wasn't hanged.
Yeah.
She didn't have life in prison. She was the 10th woman to be executed in the United States since 1976. She declined her last meal and just drank coffee. I'm sorry, I'm not gonna decline my last meal.
Me either. I think I would like a lobster roll and a steak and some really good fair fries.
You do love your fair fries,
I
man.
love fair fries with a lot of vinegar.
Her final words were, "I'd just like to say I'm sailing with the Rock, and I'll be back like Independence Day with Jesus, June 6th. Like the movie. Big mothership and all. I'll be back."
What does that even mean?
I don't know. What... She must have seen Independence Day while she was in prison. Aileen was a prolific serial killer, and I truly believe that she is a case that could have been prevented. I do. With the abuse she suffered as a child, getting mental health help at a younger age or preventing the abuse altogether could have led to a different future for Aileen.
Absolutely.
Like, her mother said that the worst decision she ever made was giving up her children. What if she had kept them?
And
would we even be having this discussion?
Right. They may have had a horrible childhood with their mother, but we don't know. We know that they had a terrible childhood with their grandparents. But, I mean, it's hard to say.
It is. This is a weird one. And normally I feel strongly one way or another. It's normally pretty cut and dry for me, but this one isn't. And I don't know if it's because I feel like she could have been saved.
Yeah.
And had nobody in her corner. Not her family, not law enforcement. I mean, she was in and out of juvenile detention centers. We didn't decide that, hey, maybe we should do something.
Right. Maybe
no, we just
should
gave
commit her and get her help.
Not just tranquilizers. I don't know. What do you guys think? Let us know in the comments down below.
Yeah.
Let us know how you feel about the death penalty in regards to Eileen's case. Be nice to each other in the comments.
No wars being started.
Absolutely. If you guys are listening over on any podcasting platform, make sure you guys give us a rate and review so we can get this out to as many people as we can. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We are here every week. If you guys made it this far in the video, leave a car emoji.
We were on the same brainwave.
Oh, love that. Sharing a third brain.
That's scary for you.
It is.
Make sure you check us out on TikTok and Instagram at Spooky Sleuths Pod too.
And on that note, guys,
stay spooky, friends.
Are you for real right now? You were doing so good.
I know, you gotta cut it out. I even paused so the way you would have time to cut it.
What kind of a fucking nickname was that? Can they not be more creative?
Awful. I mean, they gotta call it her Siggy Slut or something.
Yeah,
like
something cute.